So a lot of people know you as the founder of Locomote.
We had two decisions. Do we just get the product back and just keep the lights on with the intention of trying to flip it again for a quick sale? Or option two was, can we actually sell this product and ride it out with a good story that we can then get investment and reignite everything?
'Cause I think a lot of people, they do startups without really having the right partners and people that can open the right doors and really understand the problem.
Having that naive approach to business travel really set us up for success. We had no precondition to how things were always done.
So fast forward, you've now executed this crazy strategy to create a sense of urgency and frame a new problem to the CFO. In my view, that wouldn't have been a priority. How did you make it a priority?
So the way we approached it was,
David, welcome to the Ultra Growth Podcast. How are you going, man?
I'm good, RJ. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, I know you're a busy man. You're publishing books. You're lighting the world on fire. I've been watching some content that you and Luigi's been, you guys have been producing. How are things going for you right now, man, with all that's going on?
There's a lot going on. I'm not going to lie, but I love it. I love creating. I'm a creator at heart. So whether it's our course program, our coaching, the book itself, just love bringing out something new. And this is probably the first time it's a physical product, which is extra special this time around.
So a lot of people know you as the founder of Locomote. Can you, as I understand it, it was a tech-enabled travel product to enable companies to manage and do their travel requirements easier. Can you unpack a little bit about that business and how that's led you into where you're at today with the book?
Yeah, definitely. So Locomote was originally co-founded by myself and my cousin Ross, Fastuca. So we started it back in 2011. We had got some funding into the business, some strategic funding. And what I mean by that, it was by a few gentlemen who had been in this space, particularly Phil Wyman and Clive Scher. And they had a really great network of senior business people who could pretty much open the door for us to try and get the product through. If I fast forward 2011, we had signed some big name customers like the World Vision, ANZ Bank, which almost broke the company itself, but was a crazy good journey and good blessing. And then from there, we gained further investment from a company called Travelport, which weren't listed at the time, but during their acquirement of Locomote in parts, because it was a three-stage process, they then became a listed company on the New York Stock Exchange, which was a great experience being part of, and we could see how the dynamics changed, to then a full acquisition in 2016, which then my cousin Ross and I had the golden handcuffs to August 2018. We left the business, then fast forward into the world of COVID 2021. Obviously, a lot of businesses got hit hard. I'd argue that none more so than travel, being that, instantly no company in the travel space could generate revenue, but not only not being able to generate revenue, they had to give refunds on pre-booked travel. So they went in the negative even faster. So that's when we found out that Travelport were looking at the selling off a few of the assets that they had bought over their journey and to primarily focus on their core offering, which is a great lesson in focus. And we thought, you know what, why not? Like, this is a bit of a round two on Locomote. So Ross and I went into the process. It was funny having them sell us, the company and trying to show us what they've done over the years. So that was a bit of a surreal moment. But at that stage there during COVID, we had two decisions. One, do we just get the product back and just keep the lights on with the intention of trying to flip it again for a quick sale? Or option two was, can we actually sell this product during COVID and ride it out with a good story that we can then get investment and reignite everything? So we're playing both plays at the same time. Quite quickly, we realized that anyone that was interested in buying Locomote just didn't have the funds because they were in the travel space themselves, so that had bigger problems rather than acquisition. So that's when I enlisted the help of my good friend and now co-founder in Growth Forum, being Luigi. So I said to him, I go, mate, I'm in a bit of a pickle of how do I approach this? Who the hell is going to want to listen to me about taking on a product which they can't even use in the company yet, and we don't know when, because this is 2021. Um, and we're selling primarily in the Australian market at that time. So I need to really iron out what problem statement am I tackling, who am I going after, and what the right approach is. So that began the sort of collaboration with Luigi at that time, where we changed our whole messaging front. We changed who we were targeting, and we built out our outbound cadence. And during that process, so that was implementing that was crazy successful. It was great. So what we did there for some takeaways, we targeted CFOs because they were the primary decision maker. And rather than tackling a problem that they have now, we reframed it to a bigger problem that might encounter later. So, and what that problem looked like was, hey, CFO RJ, have you thought about when you start to let your team travel again, what that looks like? Have you got your compliances in check or your duty of care and governance? Because at that stage there, businesses who were spending, call it sub $1 million on travel, were either had a travel agency they were leveraging, or were just letting their team go and book direct and submit expenses. So we started to target that group there who just let things go and now needed more control. And that worked well. So we were able to get book calls, we were able to sign customers up. And then once COVID eased out, we had launched out, we had built a 150 mil pipeline within 6 months using that approach. And if I fast forward on a bit from there, this is a long backstory, but it makes sense. We then leveraged that great momentum to get investments, started to build out the team again. And then in 2023, early 23, I made the decision to leave Locomote. My cousin Ross, he's still CEO and running the show there. They've got a great sales team. They're applying the same sales system that we had set up initially. But I fell in love with the process that I went through with Luigi, and I just kept getting drawn towards that. I'm a sales and marketer by background. And I thought the impact that he had on me in my business during that time, more founders, more business owners need to experience that type of system because they can enable them to do amazing things. So then we made the decision to leave Locomote and form Grow Forum together with Luigi.
There's a lot in that tale. I wanna go back to the origin point of that story because I think you touched on something that was really interesting, and I wanna ask you, those 2 original investors or people, those 2 guys that backed you, did they have experience in big box travel agency? Like, did they see your model as disruptive to a traditional industry that they had been part of before?
Yeah, yes. So Phil Wyman, he himself had built a travel agency, like your traditional back in the 80s and 90s, was crazy successful. Then he was looking at pretty much just doing version 2 of that carbon copy. He had a travel agency inbuilt where the office that he was working from, he pretty much had like a co-working space before co-working spaces were popular, but purely it was all the businesses who he had invested in. So it's quite a cool space. And we got invited to join Phil and his companies in there purely from a technology perspective, where Locomotes at the time, this could be something that the travel agency could use, to help them take on more customers. And I guess over the 2 year sort of period, so 2011 to 2012, 13, as a collective, we quickly realized that maybe this can be the thing that, becomes the bigger product, because we were finding that more corporates were wanting to go direct to technology, then get the travel agency afterwards. So yeah, there was a few different shifts in dynamic, but yes, he did come from a travel background and had, the right contacts. And most important, he had encountered the problem that he then presented to us.
And I think that's what I wanna touch on. I think that, and I don't know if you guys had this in your mind at the time, when you I think the advantage of going the route that you did was that you leveraged people that understood the problem, but as a startup, you kinda had a pathway to exit too, right? Like, did you guys really map out your timelines and because with that kind of credibility, those kind of contexts, I think a lot of people, they do startups without really having the right partners and people that can open the right doors and really understand the problem. And then the second part of the issue I see with a lot of startups is they don't really understand their pathway to exit. Whereas it sounds to me that you guys had that flight path in regards to where you were gonna go and how you were potentially gonna get out.
Correct. And look, that was a major learning looking back, right? Look, going through the process there, we were young, naive, Ross and I, we were in our early 20s.
Yeah.
We didn't set out to build anything in travel. We were just loved building things. We were running a design and marketing agency at the time. We knew that we could execute on anything. We just needed the opportunity. And we knew we wanted to build a product. We just, were just going through the motions of trying to find the right product to build. So I think having that naive approach to business travel really set us up for success as well, because we had no precondition to how things were always done. So we came in with I'll never forget when people in trouble were looking at the platform, they were like, holy shit, this looks like nothing we've ever experienced before or used. And we're like, yeah, cool. Because we had never used anything that they were used to before. So it was like a great, like from a design perspective, we put a major emphasis on that. That was my baby. I love the design. And from Ross's perspective was making sure the technology was really fast and easy to use. And it felt like something that was lightning speed, and just provided an amazing experience. And we quickly then had to dive into the world of travel to understand the nuances. But having that sort of naive approach at the start was great, number one. And then having Phil and Clive understand the market as to, there's only two or three big players in the space. One of these players doesn't have a product like this, so they're probably the best one that's looking at that would potentially acquire us if we do X. It was great having that roadmap. 1,001 things had to go right, and 1,000,001 things went wrong. But still, we had a pathway through to, okay, well, what does it look like, over the next 5 years, and when do we pull a trigger on potentially forcing an exit if we want to get out of the game?
Yeah. So fast forward, you've now executed this crazy strategy during COVID within the travel sector. Ho to create a sense of urgency or to find a and frame a new problem to the CFO, how did you create energy and urgency for them to wanna act? Like, were these CFOs just looking for projects because they were bored? Like, that in my view, that wouldn't have been a priority. How did you make it a priority?
Yeah, it was the bottom of bottom priority for them, right? If you're thinking about a CFO, they were probably going through a mad instance of crap. All of that stuff are going remote. We need to buy this, buy that. So budgets were getting, hammered. Operationally, they had a lot on their plate. So it was the last thing on their mind, right? And rightfully so. So the way we approached it was this is the best time to migrate to a new platform because there's no travel happening. You're not going to have trips in play, approvals in play, people en route, and then having to do a change management process. If you're ever going to change platform, if you ever had thought about migrating because you didn't like XYZ of what you're currently using, this is your chance. So we framed it first off was, a bit of fear as to, are you ready for when travel happens again? And do you have all your checks and balances in place? If no, this does it all for you out of the box. And two, if that is something of concern, then now is the time to act. And instead of doing a big implementation, where generally an implementation could take anywhere from a couple of weeks because you need their policy and you got to get all their staff data into the platform, we then broke it down into a few basic steps that spread over a period of time that made it feel really light touch from their end. I think combining that sort of approach, and that comes with a bit of a hindsight as to, the Locomote V1, understanding why we won customers, why we lost customers, and what happens during that onboarding phase, which is key. Because a lot of companies out there, whether they're tech or services, when you're onboarding a customer, that's a chance, that's an additional chance for you to win the customer again or lose the customer during that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about the user experience because I know that at Locomote, it was a big part of how you guys engaged your market, right? Like, you had a real sound focus on user experience, and we'll talk about how that bleeds into your current book and process. So, taking that experience of what you and Luigi learned at Locomote, how have you then applied that within the new book, and what were the principles that kind of came out of that whole experience that now are applicable to my business, his business, her business?
Yeah, no, great. So what we did with the book, and it's called the B2B Sales Playbook, is that we tried to instill all the lessons that Luigi taught me during that time, but not just what I did within the tech space. Louis been coaching and training for 20 plus years across different industries, whether they be founders, AEs, sales reps, across franchise sales, you name it, right? But he found a common thread, that the process was generally the same. The things that would change would be potentially the channel that you communicate with your prospect on, and obviously the messaging. Once you nail the right message and earning the right to gain time on someone's calendar, that really unlocks everything for you. So what we did with the book is that we tried to outline all the steps from I've got no customers or minimal. How do you go from ground zero all the way through to having a sales system that generates qualified leads on the fly? So from understanding the right channels to understanding your ideal customer profile, what that looks like. And a lot of people have heard that 1,000 times, but 99% of people do it wrong. And we outline the right way to do it versus the wrong way and how you need to maintain that. A lot of people just do it once, leave it, give it a name, and it's a PDF on Google Drive. And then people look at it once every 6 months, if best. But we try and bleed that into it's something that should be ever changing based on the conversations that you have, because people's roles and the problems that they're facing evolve over time. So, same as to what you need to be looking at and how you message your product or service offering. And then we designed the book to be a bit of a choose your own adventure. We had a look at all the sales books out there, and we're avid readers and love a lot what's out there. We, love the game, respect the industry, and a lot of the authors have, contributed as well. Other authors contributed to the book and part of the launch, but we want to create something different. We didn't want to make something else that someone has done and with our own angle. So the way we approached this book was a choose your own adventure where if you're experiencing a particular problem, you could jump straight to that chapter. We provide templates and resources in every chapter, as well as coaching with a story as well. So you get the guidance, you get the framework and resource, and then the ability to integrate that into your business from reading one chapter, or you can read it from cover to back and implement the whole system. It's completely up to you on how you digest it and implement it. But we do say it's not a fluffy book. It's not something that's meant to give you inspiration or motivation. It's a tactical book. It's for if you need to get sales or you want more sales in the business and you want to unlock that growth, this is the type of book that we wanted to write.
And so you're a marketer by trade, right? Like, that's your craft, is that right?
Correct, correct. Yeah, well, Louis calls me a failed salesperson turned
A
marketer.
failed sales. Yeah, yeah. Well, you're on the other side of the and I wanna touch on that because I know Louis well, and for whatever reason, he hasn't been on the show yet. I've had everyone around him on, and we've been talking about I've gotta get him on next, but I know Louis is a through and through sales genius and gun. Like, what's the relationship with marketing in sales in your view? Because I know that I've spoken to many different people, and everyone has a different opinion on how the 2 relate. I remember talking to Tony Hughes, and he said that in his view, marketing should be part of sales, and I've talked to marketers who view it the other way around. Like, how do you see that relationship in service of the customer journey playing out optimally?
Yeah, look, in my view, and from what I've seen from companies that excel, right? So that's not just from my experience, it's from the companies that we work with, train and coach, and others that are outside of that, they do extremely well, have got the marketing and sales department together to form a revenue area within the business, right? So, and often you might find marketers not agree partially to that because there are parts of marketing where it's really hard to attribute the success. And that's probably around the brand side of things because you might do something and spend so call it $20,000, $30,000 and not see hard attribution to a sale. And depending on where you are in the business, you might need every dollar going towards something that can drive revenue. My sort of feel is, and I empathize with the marketers because I believe that if you're looking at trying to create a moat around your business, one of the biggest and best moats you can build is brand, right? But brand takes time and it takes investment. So not everyone can do that from the outset. So I look at that sort of slicing up your budget where having a brand play always going and being okay with not, attributing any ROI to that. Just call it, the black box. We want to try cool things, different things to build our brand. Now, the way you can see that impact in sales is that when I'm talking to someone, one, are they problem aware? Two, are they aware of our brand? And three, are deals closing easier? Now, if you can tick the boxes on all those, then you know that marketing is doing their job, right? They built a bit of trust. They understand the problem that they have. And then they understand that you're a provider that can help solve that, whether it be a service or product that you offer them. So, in my simple view, marketing is there to enable sales to become easier, right? As the one sentence sort of takeaway. How that's done within different businesses can vary 1,001 different ways, but the sales people should feel enabled and able to collaborate with the marketing team and be sharing the conversations, the discovery calls, so that marketing can use the voice of the customer in their marketing efforts. So then when someone comes across your brand, it feels like you're talking to them one on one. So I'm a strong believer, one camp for that.
Talking about that, so we're talking about a revenue function, and we've seen the rise of the CRO, right? The chief revenue officer. It's interesting though, like in my perception, that chief revenue officer and the structure that follows it, in my opinion, has really only been adopted by tech. Like is that a fair call? Like, and why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's a fair call. And typically the tech industry has moved faster than others by nature of the space they're in and the developments that happen in that space. And there's a lot more openness in relation to the roles that are happening. If you look at, a CMO, they often themselves are creating their own personal brand and are talking about that CRO role coming into play. So, like, I feel like it's more of an awareness piece that we see that happening a lot more in that industry. But I do see that happening in other industries now, whether it be the finance industry are now looking at implementing CROs and having that revenue function form under them. And it's mainly where those organizations that are trying to bring sales and marketing together, because you don't want to, traditionally it was on the CMO type of level, but now we're seeing that being divided where you got a CRO, then you might have a head of sales and a head of marketing, and then they work with their teams, but it all flows through to that top role. It's starting to become more common practice, but mainly for companies that are hitting I think a certain team size and revenue mark, because it is an investment, of course, right? Investment in personnel, differentiation within the organization. You might need to bolt on additional people. With that comes more resources that's required. But it is starting to become more of the norm, which is good. I believe it's a good thing.
Is your and Luigi's focus within the book, like I've always been in the services space, right? Like, would is it safe to say that the principles that are applicable are also applicable for services as well as tech, or is your lessons and the principles primarily driven through the lens of tech and technology?
I'd argue that so we counteract that whole tech push play with using case studies from a completely non-tech background. So we're bringing use cases of Luigi actually doing this himself in a company that he invested in called P3 Recovery. So think about like a gym franchise. It's in that world, but it's in the world of recovery. So we're like, let's test this in a completely left field world, a high spend, because if people are opening up a P3, you're looking at anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, let's call it. So it's a big sale. And you're dealing with people who are first time business owners. So really tough, challenging market versus someone spending 5 or 10 grand on a software license that's educated and has someone else's budget potentially. So we bring in narratives of these type of different stories on how our vision selling framework that we talk about in the book applies to both service and tech businesses. It purely comes down to your channel of approach, your messaging, and then how you engage that prospect over time. Because the way of selling really doesn't change too much apart from the tools and tactics that come out. Obviously, 5 years ago, AI, not here. Now it's in our face every 4 seconds. So it's about, mapping everything out efficiently. So we didn't want to make this the B2B tech sales playbook. It's primarily focused on the B2B side of things, no matter the niche or industry you're in.
So if you're operating a business within a commodity product, which is a me too product, like a broom, let's just say, your principles and the principles within the book would be relevant to that too.
Yes and no. Look, if I'm being blunt on myself here, we typically stay away from someone that's selling like a widget or a $5-10 sort of item. That's leaning towards more your B2C model where it's a big media, meta paid ads type of play.
Yeah, right.
We're more on the side of now how can you build a sustainable pipeline without having to spend money on ads? Because advertising, you feel like you have control, and I'll use the inverted quotas, you feel, because you might be working 1 week, then all of a sudden your pitch, your approach, your graphic will just bomb, and then you need to recreate that, and you're constantly on that hamster wheel. Oh, if it works, then it doesn't work. It works, then it doesn't work, and it's really hard to forecast out. If you have to put your hand on heart and take an investor's money and forecast out a paid media approach, I'd call bullshit on that every day because you don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. Versus we get a sales rep in, they apply this system and framework that we've tried and tested, and we know that we're going to get anywhere from a 10 to 20% variance of results if they apply this role. Because then you've got that, every individual's be different, their creativity, their energy. But if you give a guardrails of 20% either way, you can forecast with a high level of confidence that you're going to generate these results because you've got a proven system and playbook in place. So having salespeople within the business only really applies itself to those that have got a medium to high ticket type of offering, not
Yeah, right.
a $20 license.
Yeah, okay. And what's the framework's relation to, which is now becoming a hot topic because of social selling in the world of LinkedIn, which to me, I'm an old school seller. So, like I've got my views on that. But what's the book's view and in your view on prospecting?
So look, our view is it's a combination of approach where you see all these thousands of tools that are out there, and some of them are amazing, right? You've got your Clay automations and they can make really personalized emails, but it's really single channel or even multi-channel, call it LinkedIn and email. The thing is that now, because it's so easy to do, so many people are doing it and we're all getting smashed.
It's
So now,
depersonalized.
that's right. Doesn't matter how personalized it is, it's still because of the volume, it's too much, right? So what we advocate and promote is like a multi-channel approach. So it's email, it's the phone, it's instant message, and it's social. And then depending on where your prospect responds to you, then you communicate with them on their primary channel. Like I've got so many different variances of deals that I've won where they've come via email because they love email, phone. Some have done in LinkedIn messages directly. Some have been via WhatsApp. It's everywhere. So it's about being where your customer is most active, but you need to have an outreach cadence that it leverages all those channels in play. And often the feedback we get is like, shit, we feel like we're bombarding and we're annoying the prospect. Where the truth of the matter is that if you look at your phone now and pick it up, I'd argue that most of us have got the red dot with some crazy high numbers across a number of apps. So they're probably not even seeing your message, your email until the 15th, 18th touch. Then they respond. And oftentimes they're apologizing because they hadn't responded. But now they've got the time, the breadth, and you hit them on the right channel that they can respond at. And then you can engage with them and bring them to another channel if you want. But you need to be multi channel.
Once you have a prospect and you in the business have determined that you want to move them through the funnel, in your experience, like how many businesses actually have a process and a structure, and how important is it to actually have a process? And is that process customized per business? Like, is it part of your framework?
We find that some have like the majority have implemented something. When I say something, it's like a light version of what good looks like. So tick that at least they are aware that they need to do something. But then we find that almost 100% aren't following it to a T. They'll skip the process. They'll go from discovery to proposal, send the email out. They'll just break it because I feel like I've had a great conversation. So I can now break the process. And look, we've done this ourselves. Louis done it not long ago, right? I'll throw him under the bus here because he can't defend himself, which is great.
I'm gonna close this one. This is different. This is different.
I've got the relationship, I'm going to close it. So we'll skip it. And then it falls. And then we're like, man, we do this daily. We teach this. Yet we can still succumb to the allure of a quick sale.
Never happens. It never happens, not on an enterprise level.
No,
Very rarely,
that's right.
right?
So you got to follow the process. And we outline, we openly share, this is our process. This is our pipeline. This is what we do in every stage. Now, you can change that, of course. Like everyone's going to have their nuances. We don't, do live demos. We do X, or we don't have anything to demo because we're a service, so we need to do Y, and that's okay. And that's where we engage in the conversation and the coaching and training to manipulate that to suit the business. But what we provide is like 98% of the way. And then the 2%, you just need to finesse for your industry and for the people that you're targeting. But the fact is, still many, many people are not implementing a proper process in place. They get captivated by the CRMs that are out there and try and shoehorn a process to fit this CRM because it's a cool CRM or whatnot. Um, and I'll be careful not to name any CRMs out there. There's quite a lot, but a lot of them are starting to forget about their customer and trying to go after new audiences, but adding new features, new this and that, where the core is all you need to focus on. And that brings you 90% of your lead volume. The 10%, the shiny paper that we all get hooked on. Oh, I can do AI automation here. I could do that. Yeah, it's cool. But I guarantee you, put that up against our process and our pipeline, and we'll beat it every day of the week.
Yeah. Look, I feel like a lot of businesses have these days like a decent post-sales program, customer experience, account managers, but like not a lot of businesses are actually mapping out pre-sales and actually looking at the experience of the prospective customer prior to them actually signing and looking at the consistency or the inconsistencies across reps, right? I'm a CEO of a company. We're building a go-to-market team. We've hired 3 or 4 new sales guys, and we're trying to create some structure around how we actually go to market because we've got different people with different cadence, different rhythms. Some are fast, some think, it's going to be quick kill, some probably wait too long, and it's chaos. And we're kind of in the process of building it. And you just know that where we're at right now, one prospective customer would have 5 different experiences with anyone from our business. And that's not good. Like, he might think we're a premium provider based on one's approach. He might think we're a a sub-optimal and it's not scalable and sustainable, right?
No, it's tough to manage that, and that's where we like to install, like guardrails into the business. And what I mean by that is, people are like, do we need a script, or we feel robotic? And we're like, okay, don't look at it like a script that you need to read it word for word. Look at it as a guardrail where you can have up on your screen, or have memorized in your head enough where you know where the conversation needs to lead, and the right questions to ask, so that the team is aligned in their approach. So it doesn't matter if I'm talking to John, David, Sally, I'm getting the same experience from everyone in the team. That then puts you in like the top 1% of companies, and we've have a proper system out there that then, on hand on heart, that you can then replicate that and start to add additional resources and people with a super high level of confidence that the company is going to grow from that. Now, you will get the occasional people problems and not the right fit, and you need to replace that. That's nature. It happens in any role and any function. Um, but what we're seeing a lot now, especially in the VC market, because we tapped into that quite deeply, we provide our playbook and our frameworks to VC portfolio companies, is that they're moving their approach from a heavy paid media, just go and spend and burn, to get a process and system in place, then hire people to execute on that. Even now, which is super surprising to me, we recently had signed up a new customer, and who typically I would say you're not the right fit for us because of the price point that they were selling their service at. They were doing like a $100 a license per month, and they're like, no, no, we have got sales reps selling this. And I was like, wow. I'm like, how many? They go, we got two, and we want to onboard another three. I'm like, okay, why? And they're like, we just got investment, and we put forward an approach where outlined our, based on headcount of salespeople, this is the growth rate we expect to achieve. I'm like, I love you. I'm like, that's gold, because if I'm an investor myself and I see that, I'll be like, okay, this person knows their shit, and they know they're the right path, versus someone that says, if we spend $1 million a month on paid media, we're going to get X. I'll be more, I think that was probably 5 years ago where that worked really well, where the shift has changed. Well, we're seeing salespeople be treated with the same respect and aura that, software engineers were 5 years ago. It's a finally, it's a respected and well credited area that people are proud to say, I work in sales for this company, versus people would often cringe. Yeah, try and come up with another. I'm success XYZ for this company. People are now being proud that I've hit President's Club. I've helped the company hit their 10 mil milestone because of my impact, which is good. Which slowly moving away from the sleazy salesman mentality of what people think the sales role is, to now it's the engine, it's the heartbeat of any company.
Yeah, I agree with you, David. Like, it's good to see, like, strategic sellers being valued again, because I actually think it's a hard person to find these days because of the evolution of social selling and social media. I think that a lot of the younger people that came up with a rise of that lost those skills to reach out, have to get through gatekeepers, jump over this, go under that, and now we're valuing that because I think people want to be spoken to, and they want a personalized message, and they're not answering LinkedIn messages because they got 100,000 of them in there. And even now, I'm more likely. I was talking to this with the sales team, like, I'm more likely to answer a phone call from a landline now than a mobile, right? Isn't that weird? I would have never done that before.
Yeah, that's right. Things change, right? Whereas probably 8 months ago, you'll be the opposite and only be in mobile. So that's where if we go back to what I was talking about earlier about the persona, if you start to see that shift, then you'll be like, okay, guys, now we're going to revert our outbound calling number to landline because we're seeing more pickup rates happening from here. Update the persona, update the system, and let's go. These aren't systems that are set and forget and look at it once a year. These are like that, evolving. And you only can evolve if you're having those conversations with the team, if you've got the data. So then, you're having your, whether it be a monthly review whip of what's working, what's not working, what do we stop, start, continue, and go, cool, let's implement this now. And let's touch base every week to see what if this is working better. Those who do that and make changes to the system frequently, I just will win. It's just inevitable that you will win.
Yeah, look, what I'm hearing from you, it's about iterating, right? Like it's not about set and forget. It's about actually being proactive and looking at the model and testing assumptions and what's working, what's not working, and those that do that. And I agree with you. I think a lot of everyone needs sales. Everyone recognizes sales and is very important. But if you look at sales with generally within a company, that's still the most disorganized, ironically, usually with the lack of systems and process. But like everyone needs revenue, but there's no system. So what we do, we send 10 people out there into the field and we just sit back in head office and wait, right, for them to bring shit back in. And when they don't, we kick their ass, right? And when they win, we're like, yay, it's
I've got a funny story for that one. Look, just to before the story, I bring that sort of tech engineering world of iteration and software's never done approach to the sales and the frameworks. Right, I'll never forget one of our original founders, Locomote, was like, "So are we done? And like, is the product finished?" And Ross and I looked at him and we're like, "It's never done. Like it's like," and he's like, "What do you mean? So we have to keep the engineers?" And we're like, "Yeah. Like, what do you think? You just build it and like that's it. It's not a book. Like you need someone to keep going on it." It was a weird conversation, but it's you got to treat your systems and processes. Doesn't matter if it's sales, operational, marketing. Same shit applies, right? You need to keep iterating on that because things outside your business changes. Like people start answering landline versus mobile. AI comes into play. Something else changes. So and that forces you to iterate. So you need to always keep going. And then the funny story was to what you just said earlier was I'll never forget the first time in Locomote where we had a sales team. Um, Phil had his approach, and all respect, it worked for him for many many years. He's like, we're going to hire 10 people, and out of those 10 people, two will stay. And I'm looking at Ross, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, it makes sense. We had no system in play or anything like that. It was purely Ross going out, meeting a customer, me doing the same, Phil with the connection. So we didn't have a system in place. It was more get bodies in. The best ones will work shit out for themselves, and they will stay. The rest will go. And while many companies still do that now, what I realized was that was all hinged on the individual. So they would do what works for them because it's working. Then CEO then approves them and pats them on the back for a good job well done. So they keep doing that, right? Then CEO realizes, hey, we need to get another 10 people on the business or we want to grow faster. So we need more people to come in. Let's put a system in place. And it's like, okay, but now all these high performers don't want to do the system because they're used to their way and you've appraised them for that. So you almost like need to blow it up and start again. But it was good hindsight. Like I would never had learned to understand that without going through that process. So I loved the experience. Like I put the Locomote days and the people we worked with to like a hardcore fast forward MBA in business because we did a lot of great things. We did a lot of things that, were good lessons. You're either winning or learning. We learned a ton of what to do and what not to do. And I love just sharing as much as I can on that to help founders overcome those mistakes without having to go through the pain and the cost. And we share a lot of that in the book as well, but with action.
no, that's excellent. I mean, one of the hardest things for me to move from like a head of growth sales guy to CEO was actually learning how to manage and create structure and systems for salespeople because I never operated with sales and with structures and systems myself. I kind of just did what I wanted when I wanted, and that might have worked for me. Maybe it didn't. I had a couple years that blew up because I missed the mark because I was like right on an edge around hitting numbers and. But yeah, I mean to learn that and to learn it the hard way, I had to go through that myself. And look, really value this conversation, David. Where can the audience learn more about you and the book and what you're doing, man?
I'm super active on LinkedIn. So if you reach out to me, mention a podcast, I'll accept. We can start a chat. And the book is available on Amazon. We'll share the link in the show notes. But if you just search up the B2B Sales Playbook on Amazon, you'll find it there. And yeah, I appreciate everyone for listening. RJ, awesome chat, mate.
Thanks, brother.